So let's get into this actual process and give a kind of walk through of what steps we've got involved here. So what we're trying to do is take all of the sales orders. We want to find a way to ultimately get them to being available on a mobile app for someone to pick paperlessly. And the steps that we've got are all designed to enable us to pick with the most effective picking strategy. First and foremost, matching the right items to the right pick strategy. And that also takes some consideration of the materials handling equipment and the layout of the warehouse and the order volume that you've got for that particular day. Those things need to be factored in. Then once we know which picking strategy we want to release, we need to consider how do we actually want to filter those orders. So if you think of what are the searches we'd want to apply, and you've got on here the different data that we make available to someone when they're releasing a sales order. But the key things to think about is like your actual use cases, like how are you sorting orders right now? Why do you do it that way? And the first thing you need to think is, in the future, if I can pick in batches and I can pick paperlessly and I can increase my order fulfillment capacity, do I still need to prioritize based on those things? That's the first thing, right? Because it may be that you don't need to. And right now you're prioritizing because you're not getting all the orders out. So you have to pick a certain type first. So that's the first consideration. Second consideration is, okay, all things considered, knowing what our future pick capacity is going to be, what's the best way to sort and group orders together? And we enable you to use a combination of and/or filters against these different pieces of data to build up relatively complex combinations that help you prioritize which orders or which batches of orders get picked first. So, an example of this would be if you were shipping, you may want to prioritize orders that are of an express nature. So they've got a service type is express. And in addition to that, the customer, there could be a certain customer name. It's possibly not the best example. Maybe you also tag your sales orders using Shopify's flows, and you may tag all the orders that are from customers who have bought from you more than 5 times. So they're a loyal customer, they're a high ticket customer. So you may want to map that through into PeopleVox and have those orders that are express and also from customers that have bought from you more than 5 times. You may want to pick them in a separate batch. And that could be because you want to ship them out first, or it could be because you want to do something special for them as part of the dispatch flow. You may give them a special present or something because they're one of your most loyal customers. They may get a different box, whatever it is. Another example could be like that your DPD delivery driver is coming at 3:00 and your FedEx doesn't come till 6. So we want to pick the DPD orders first, and then we'll pick the FedEx orders after. So we're just prioritizing when things get done based on the deadline of when they actually need to be picked and shipped out. And these can get like relatively complex. You may decide that you want to split out orders based on the picking strategy being appropriate. So a real example would be, and this isn't the aim of this isn't to go through all the different picking strategies, but an example of this would be that if you've got orders with more than say 3 items per order but less than 10, and you pick like small, mid-sized parcel items, you may decide that picking and sorting orders into discrete orders as you go is the most effective method. So you would create a search on show me all of the orders where the number of lines is no more than 5 and the total number of items is less than 10, for example. And you may also tag all of your products that are oversized. So the item attributes, one of the item attribute fields might be assigned to oversized. So where item attribute field 15 equals, contains data or contains oversized, exclude all of those items from this batch because we don't want to send a picker off with a trolley and then they're asked to pick, a surfboard or something. And likewise, you could use that tag to include an item into a batch. So you may say, let's pick all of our single item orders that have got bulky items or oversized on together, and we'll pick them in batches of 5, and we'll go out with a big cage to pick those orders. So that's what the and or filters are around, and you can save those searches, and then you can use them each time you release your action. So we've got sales orders and their items. We then choose action types. And if you're using 2 or 3 different pick strategies, you'll go through this process for each pick strategy and for each save search that you want to apply each time. And that gives you complete control over what picking strategies get used when and how the orders are being released to the warehouse. This is a million miles away from printing all this paper and doing all of this manual sorting. This is a big time save versus where you're likely to be at the moment. And the magic here, though, is the visibility it's going to give you, because once these actions are actually released, we can track their status and see like how many items have been picked, who's picking it, number of items left to go. We can really stay on top of whether these things are happening rather than just pressing print and then it just disappearing off into the ether. And we just sort of cross our fingers and hope it all goes okay. The other steps are around choosing batch size. So I mentioned this for the bigger orders, orders with big items, you may have smaller batches. When you're in your really peak times, so using a single item pick where you're just picking everything into a shopping trolley, you may use a very large batch size, like 150 per batch. And you can see how there's this complexity to it, which means when the person's releasing the orders, they're intentionally choosing a certain pick strategy, they're applying the right filter. They do need to consider, like based on the order backlog and the picking materials handling equipment being used, what batch size is going to be most appropriate, and also which user roles they want that batch to be available to. So who in the warehouse is actually going to see that on their device. And then the next step is really optional, where you've got this ability to capture action details. So specifically, you can say, I want to record that this is a DPD batch so that I can report on that when I'm viewing all of my actions. You can put a deadline on the action, and then you can filter on, has the deadline passed for these actions, or is the deadline coming in the next hour, for example. And then another note we put in here is like you could put a customer name on. So this is more suitable for like if you're doing a B2B order, or maybe you've had a customer who's had problems in the past, so you tag a specific order for them and you get it worked through. And you just want a way to mark that in the system. And then the final step of action release, this is where this really differentiates what we're doing here from the manual way, because up until this point, we've had the items allocated to the orders, and that step happens when the sales order gets imported. So sales orders imported, if the inventory is available, it gets automatically allocated to those orders, and we know which orders are allocated or not allocated. And the precursor to orders even appearing at the point of assigning an action type is either they need to be fully allocated, so all the inventory is available, or they need to be marked as enabled for partial shipping. So if an order comes in and you didn't intend for it to be partially allocated, you'd need to consciously make a decision of, yeah, we're going to enable partial shipping on that order, and then it's going to turn up and be made available for picking. And likewise, if an order just comes in and you haven't got the inventory, it's not going to make it available for shipping out. And what that gives you is a view of all of your orders that are unfulfillable at any point in time. So rather than printing off all your paper and realizing once people have been wasting hours walking around the warehouse looking, all of those problems around finding items, or items are out of stock, or this wasn't allocated, all those inventory related issues that impact customer orders, they're all front loaded. So if they happen, you're going to realize super quick. And obviously that improves your resolution time on those problem orders if they occur, right? And I guess the thing underlying all of this, right, is that the aim of a warehouse system is first and foremost to get inventory accurate and get an accurate inventory to your website. So that problem should be lessened significantly. And in addition to that, when it does occur, you're going to know about it much sooner. That's really important. And the other thing that doesn't happen until this action release point, which has come up a few times in the last 6 months, is we don't actually hard allocate specific inventory to a specific order until the action's created. And what this means is that up until the point of action creation, you can freely be moving inventory between your picking locations. You can just literally pick something up, scan, I'm moving this from here to here. And the system it's not going to stop you doing that. It's not going to cause you any problems downstream. And I have seen that in other systems in other warehouse systems where you're actually unable to move inventory just because it's been allocated to the order. And that the difference there is that we have something called soft allocation when the order comes in and the initial allocation is made. And then we have hard allocation at the point of action release. And so we hit action release. Systems then looking at the batches that you want to create, it's going to group them into the right batch size, it's going to assign them to the right picking method. It also then checks that the inventory is available in the pick locations. So it's great, we know that the items are available in the warehouse, but are they actually in pick before this occurs? And so there's a process, a precursor to this, a prerequisite, if you like, which is that you need to run your replenishment requests and you need to run your replen report by allocation to sales order to check to see what items are in bulk that need to be in pick. And then once you're happy with that, you then proceed with the action release process. But the clever thing here is that if you actually do then release an action and the items aren't in pick, it just won't create an action for those sales orders. It will tell you, these sales orders weren't in a pickable location. You can then go and solve for that particular problem. It could be that one item was moved out of a pick location into bulk for some reason to create space or whatever. Even by mistake, it can then just be moved back, and then you can release the action afterwards. So again, if you look at that process, again, we've just got a way of knowing when things are going wrong before they actually happen on the ground. We're not wasting time walking around discovering these things through the day, and we're not causing unnecessary delay. And the final thing that happens here is that once the orders are created into actions, they get their status marked as released. It's different from their sales order status. So the sales order status would stay as allocated or partially allocated, but there's this additional flag, which is the order released, yes or no? And once it's released as well, this is a key thing actually, is this, once it is released, a common question is like, what's the point of no return? What point can we still accept changes to the order? And until it's been picked, if you want to change the order, cancel the order, put the order on hold, you can do that. And you can remove it from the action by making changes to it. The challenge comes once someone started picking. That's then going to start to limit your options on what you can change. But the most important thing that can be changed all the way through to the point of dispatch is actually the shipping address, because a common exception that occurs at the point of dispatch is like the shipping address isn't right. It's not printing the shipping label for some reason. It could be you've got bad address lookup on your website, or you're not using a smart shipping solution like Starship It that can run through all of the addresses in advance of the final dispatch. And so that's a key step. But once the actions are released and the items are in pick, that's then sending them to the mobile device. And that means they're available for the pickers in the warehouse. And whilst going through the detail takes a while, and understanding the principle behind it can take a while to wrap your head around, once you've matched your business requirement to the way that you want to run this process, you're really doing a very finite number of, working with a finite number of variables, and you've got this ability to tailor how you release orders based on the order flow coming into the warehouse, the volume of orders you've got waiting to ship, the labor you've got available, the materials handling equipment you've got available. How are you leveraging that in the right way? For example, you may use up all of your trolleys that are set up for pick and sort to trolleys, so you may resort to picking into totes. You got that flexibility to change it. And once it's set up and you got the team trained on using it, this is an incredibly flexible way of working. It makes it a very agile and responsive picking operation, because we're really able to, at the drop of a hat, change the way that we're prioritizing things and making sure that we're satisfying the most customers as possible. Ultimately, the aim of this is to turn, whilst it's turning customer orders into batches of orders for paperless picking, the end goal here is to get every customer order out on time, and the action release process has been designed around serving that.